everyone, welcome to another interesting episode of Engineering and Beyond. Today we have a very interesting guest with us. So traditionally, most people take a master's in engineering after their undergrad or an MBA. But here is someone who's done a master's in public administration and international development from the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Welcome to the show, Rohan.
Thanks, Siddharth. Thanks, everyone. I did not get here by design. So I was the usual disillusioned engineer, not really, satisfied by the way engineering was taught in this country, or even, the kind of work that the industry offered. So I was looking, so I was kind of, it's really, I had my eyes peeled and ears to the ground, and wanted to see what else can I do where some of my skills could be used, but it's good enough. From a fundamental point of view, I like problem solving, which I'm guessing most engineers kind of like. And, that's what I was searching for. And once you're in that frame of mind, then you just become like a sponge where you kind of try to absorb as much as you can. So that's what I did. You look for an opportunity and then you pounce on it. So I got Teach for India. I was the first intern there. I interned with them. It was a very offbeat kind of internship that I did. But it paid off because it exposed me to the growing world of international development, and which was just taking off in India. And then I got Avanti, again volunteering work, but it was leadership role where I was helping them launch operations in Kanpur. So both of these were in the nascent stage, really growing, and that is what my kind of foray in the development space was. And by the end of my fifth year, when I finished 1.5 years with Avanti, I was certain that I wanted to stay in this sector. UPSC. Now, what I really value is, UPSC for somebody like me who is passionate about the public sector would be an interesting choice. And but then for me, the key thing is having that flexibility to be able to pivot and search the space and quickly move back and forth between different places, which UPSC did not. You're fixed into one job, and there's a lot. You have a lot more accountability and responsibility probably, and even potential for impact. But the latitude in which you can move around, wanting to do certain things, gets severely limited. So that's not something I wanted to give up on, and I would really urge folks to do that. I saw my friends not doing that, my batchmates not doing that, and just going with the flow and landing in jobs which they didn't like eventually. So making sure you're aware of what's happening around you as well as what you like is very important. Now, drilling down a bit in terms of the coursework itself, a policy. So like what would like a 1 or 2 year master's program in public administration look like? So a policy degree focuses on things like economics, econometrics, public policy, political institutions, regulatory affairs, and often folks do that with some policy concentration, say in education, agriculture, financial inclusion, health, and so on, based on their interest. Whereas an MBA curriculum is around marketing, finance, management, operations, accounting, business strategy, and so on. So again, from an academic experience point of view, these are pretty different. There's some again, in the recent years, there's some coming together of some, because a lot of these disciplines have now become, interdisciplinary and so on. But, broadly, this is the difference. So from an Indian perspective, what degree should you go for? So I think the decision depends on a few factors. First is how broad you want to keep your options, right? So, like many non-profits like Bridgespan, Dalberg, etc. In fact, they prefer to some extent MBAs, but they are open to both. So in a way, if you are targeting, say, consulting in India, TechnoServe and all of these development consulting, then all the opportunities that you get after an MBA are actually wider, and the opportunities you get after an MPP or MPA become a subset of those opportunities. But then if you're, if you want to go do slightly more technical thing like policy research or monitoring and evaluation, or even program implementation in the development sector, then that's where your MBA starts to being counted lesser, and a policy degree counts more. Now, the trajectories of folks coming out of either an MPP or MPA or MPID is pretty varied. But I think, again, let's try to put those into broad buckets. So the first is, at the heart of it is government. So in fact, a lot of folks, in India, it's actually difficult because in India, the channels into government or even bureaucracy is, it's not formal. Second is you could work for non-profit. So again, non-profits are of different types. On the one hand, you have consulting organizations like the ones I mentioned earlier. That's one type of non-profit. The other is monitoring and evaluation. So you have IFM-Ali, JPAL, ID Insight, Laterite, Sambodhi, CGIS. So all of these organizations are non-profits, but they focus on trying to bring data and evidence into the dialogue that's happening in this space. And the third type of non-profits are the ones who run their own programs or these days have their own products. So for instance, where I work presently, Wadhwani Institute for Artificial Intelligence, Avanti, Zaya, Educate Girls, most of these are all non-profits, but they have a specific program that they run. The third is then foundations. So you could go work for, say, like in India, Central Square Foundation, you have Azim Premji Foundation, Gates, Dell, SIF, all of these foundations. And the fourth is the fourth is multilaterals. This is actually very popular. And what you said, right? Like a lot of folks feel that this is an entry into UN. It is to a large extent. But just the UN and World Bank and UNICEF and UNDP, all of these multilaterals and even ADB, IFC, IMF, all of these kind of global institutions, these used to be very popular choices, say in the 2000s, when before 2010, when these non-profits and social enterprises were not really common. But these days, folks feel that these are very big, like government type organizations, hard to, not very meritocratic, hard to move things quicker. So it's becoming, as a choice among policy graduates, it's becoming less and less, preferred. And then the last bucket is also, which one should not discount, is the social enterprise one, which has been growing like anything, right, in the past 7 to 8 years. And there are so many social enterprises in India today. In fact, I would bet there are more opportunities abroad than in India. But when I say abroad, it's not just US. Of course, you have US, but then also African countries, Southeast Asian countries. So there are a lot of opportunities, equally good opportunities, I would say, once you've graduated out of a top college. So you have, in the US, mostly DC is filled with folks working for the World Bank or IMF. And then a lot of folks join, there are so many young startups over there, right? Interesting startups, which you don't find in India. In India, there are very, few such startups doing interesting work, which one can join. And the other good thing about the US is also that it's easy to be able to switch around. Like people won't judge you, people won't kind of pigeonhole you into a particular sector just based on where you've worked in the past. So it's easy, you can switch from policy to technology to data to what you have. There are, like a bunch of opportunities there. Now, of course, and so just to, I think, sure, like a lot of people do return to India after finishing their masters, but even among them, most actually spend some years in the US before returning to India. A, to be able to just, from a financial standpoint, just to be able to pay back their loans, and B, to get the experience. It can't be denied that the quality of experience that you can get in the US on average is still better than in India. Again, as I said, that's changing, but we're not there yet. So I was on the Joint Japan World Bank scholarship, which was a full ride. So they covered everything from living costs to tuition fees and so on. And then there are a few other full scholarships as well, but these are limited and more competitive. A lot of students in MPID do get partially funded, either through scholarships or through some fellowship, or even just by doing RShips on campus. So you do get by as an MPID student. Now, as an MPP or even other programs that so which are the other well-funded programs? One is MPID, The other is the Princeton MBA, which is a free program essentially for all students. So every student who is admitted to Princeton MBA gets fully funded. I'm not sure if it's 100% though, but it's almost there. These are the, and then LKY is also very popular because most of the international students over there do get significant funding. These three are the ones that I know of which do offer good chunk of funding. All the other programs and other universities, the funding, like the scope to get funded is very limited. You might get some few $1,000s here and there, but really not enough to be able to make a difference in your decision making. Right now, so and like one can look up the list of scholarships out there, but by and large, if you compare an MBA, and then I'll talk about MP, policy programs in absolute terms, but just in comparing an MBA and policy program, I would say that it's, like these are programs that cost like almost 1 crore rupees, including your living costs, etc. I would advise students to really think, and this is a personal choice, right? And it's not just about whether you can afford it or not. It's also about what you're getting out of it, right? It's not like a must-have. Like it's not as though you do have to go and get a master's. You need to look at the ROI eventually. So that's one. Whereas an MBA, MBA is like an investment, right? Like an MBA, it's hard to get funding, very hard. So in policy programs, it's much easier. There's much more funding available out there in all programs. So broadly, in any MPP, MPA program, they look for some demonstration of commitment to public leadership. So you should have, you can't be somebody who has just worked for 2-3 years in a for-profit or like a corporate sector and wanting to do something. There should be some evidence of the fact that this is your passion. That's one. Second is leadership. The third is for programs like MPAID and MSCAP that I mentioned, these are more quant-focused programs. So they do worry about whether you'll be able to cope up in the classes or not. So evidence of that quant-focused skills is required. Now, for engineering students, that's easier to show. There are also many of these programs, in fact, will ask you to write like a policy essay. So they do want to see if you're aware of what the policy challenges are, how you think about policy solutions. Can you communicate that well in writing or in a memo format? So that's the other aspect as well that they look for. I think dual degree programs are actually pretty unique, and for it's very competitive to get in, honestly. And again, I've most of the dual degree students I've come across are not international. So for international students, it's doubly difficult to get in. Again, I'm not making it's just like based on my limited sample set here. It's useful for areas like, for instance, healthcare. A lot of students in healthcare do that because as a healthcare professional, if you are if you're in the corporate sector and you're not aware of what the policy changes are going to be, which will impact your business, then it's hard to run your business. At the same time, if you're on the policy side or the government side, you want to know how healthcare industry is thinking about it. So healthcare is for instance, a sector where the private sector works hand in hand with policymakers and government. So if you want to kind of do something like that, then you do need both the flavors. I applied to very limited schools, honestly, and this is the other advice also to Indian students is it's not just about getting an American education. Unless you go and study in a top elite college, it's not worth it. And when I say top elite, I don't just mean Ivy League. I mean, you should do your research. You should look at, what kinds of opportunities have students who have graduated in the past. Look at their LinkedIn profiles. Look at what career paths they've gotten. How big of a jump was it from where they were before doing the program and after that. If you're not passionate enough about the sector, don't go, because these degrees are supposed to get you long-term payoffs. And it's not just about short-term job changes. Eventually, long-term, if you want to remain in the corporate sector, then either you go get a policy program and then you come back to corporate, in which case you're not really leveraging it, and so or it actually acts like a negative signal on your CV, where like corporate, if you do a policy program and apply to a place like Schlumberger, they'd be like, why did you go and do a policy program? So I think really trying to make sure that it aligns well with your passion long term is useful. Second is make sure that the economics works out. Don't put in, shell out so much money to be able to do a master's. On the flip side, obviously, the sooner you do a master's, the better in a way, because that then puts you in a higher trajectory sooner. Third is, in terms of selection of the program, I would say select, the program that will, for instance, if you don't have the right level of quant ability, then you might struggle. Or if you don't like, wanting to get quant skills, then you might struggle in a program like MPID or MSCAP, in which case it might be useful to go for a slightly more broad general program like MPA or MPP.